Well, it is time to get our bearings. And where are we? We're at Westmont College, Montecito, California. United States of America. Western Hemisphere. Planet Earth. Solar system. Milky Way galaxy. I didn't know they were going to do this. The hand of God. Now, I used to say the mind of God, but I didn't know these guys were going to do that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The mind of God sounds a little too esoteric and abstract to me, but it is pretty much what Emily wrote in her textbooks in Thornton Wilder's play, Our Town. And it's very much like what the Apostle Paul said to the Greek philosophers on Mars Hill when he quoted the 7th century Greek poet Epimenides. And he said, "In whom, God, we live and move and have our being." We're in the palm of God's hand. David wrote in his Psalm, number 8, he said, "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you set in place, what is humankind that you're mindful of us, that you care for us?" It's all very, very small. If North America, for example, were the size of the Milky Way galaxy, or if the Milky Way galaxy were the size of North America, our solar system would fit into a coffee cup. Right now, there's 3 Voyager spacecraft, or 2. They've been traveling for 30 years across our solar system. At 100,000 miles per hour, they've covered 9 billion miles. When scientists want to send a message to the spacecraft, at the speed of light, it takes 13 hours to get there. Where are we? And there are easily hundreds of billions of these coffee cups, these solar systems, these stars, and then another 100 billions galaxies. And yet, God stands over it all, and he holds it in the palm of his hand. That's our address. Now, there's a Latin phrase I want you to be familiar with. It's coram Deo. It's Latin for before the face of God. It means to live one's entire life in the presence of God, to the glory of God, under the authority of God. It means to live life in reverent fear, because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The fear of the Lord is fear. Same word. You just have to look at the context and the scriptures to know what exactly it's referring to. But I think we need to look at the fear of the Lord as a kind of respect and honor that is like terror in its intensity. When you're really, really, really scared, you're focused. Well, coram Deo, living life before the face of God, means to live for the glory of God. That's the goal of life. It means to live with integrity, no compartmentalizing, nothing is hidden. There's no inside or outside. And there he stands, holding it all. His immensity, and again, this is a spatial metaphor. His immensity is such that he's got it all right here. That's where we are. Coram Deo. I have a buddy who has a wall in his office. He calls it his wall of fame. It's pictures of people he believes lived well and finished their lives well. He has a picture of Dietrich Bonhoeffer and C.S. Lewis and other great and notable people like that, Flannery O'Connor. And I walked into his office one day and just joked, well, Paul, how come my picture isn't on your wall? And he said, well, you have to die. You have to finish well. But it got me to thinking, well, who would be on my wall? And I thought a lot about that. Who would I put on my wall if I had a wall of fame? And then it hit me. The real question is not who would I put on my wall, but am I on God's? It will not matter on the last day what I thought of somebody else, but what God thinks of me. The sweetest words you'll ever hear are, well done, good and faithful servant. And the most terrifying and appalling words will be, I don't know you or where you come from. Get away from me, all you who do evil. So much is riding on what we, or how we regard where we are, before whose face we live out our days. Next time when you come to my office, I want to show you a great, it's a reproduction, of course, of the great painting by Hieronymus Bosch, the medieval artist. It was actually a tabletop. It's called The Seven Deadly Sins and the Four Last Things. And in grand medieval fashion. And you wonder if he wasn't taking a drug or two. He's just got these psychedelic kinds of pictures of the seven deadly sins. Then the four last things are the four unavoidable, absolutely unavoidable things are death, judgment, heaven, or hell. And in the center of this picture is a pupil, an eye, observing us. That's kind of scary. But in the center of the pupil is the crucified Christ. Crown of thorns on his head, the piercing in his side. He who died for us watches over us, and he doesn't miss a thing. Well, that's sobering. I mean it to be. That's where we are. And the second question about bearings is, who is here? Now, we are here, of course, but you need to know that the Bible has a much bigger definition of the we that is here than we normally think of. Reading here from Hebrews 12, verses 22 and 23. You have come to Mount Zion, to the heavenly Jerusalem, the city of the living God. You have come to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly, to the church of the firstborn, whose names are written in heaven. According to Hebrews 12, when we worship, we enter a scene that is something like the Rose Bowl on New Year's Day times a billion. And it's going on right now. It's exuberant, it's majestic, it's noisy, it's the mother of all worship services. And when we worship, we participate in what the Apostles' Creed calls the communion of saints. We stand before the throne of God with all who are his, past, present, and future. God is the eternal contemporary. To him all are present. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. They're as alive to him as you and I are. And they're with us in God's presence with countless others. J.S. Bach and Luther and Augustine, Aquinas, my dad, and you. And among all these people, the we who are here this morning is this woman in the story. We'll get to her in a moment. But the big idea here, the reality of what we do when we come to chapel is that we don't start the worship when we start singing. We join the worship. It's already going on. And one of the things that can go wrong in worship anywhere, and in this chapel, is that there be too much of me in Jesus and not enough we. And we is big. We're surrounded, the scripture says, by a cloud of witnesses. Like that picture, a cloud. You ever walk through a cloud in an alpine region? You're just surrounded by all these people. We walk a road beaten hard by the footsteps of the saints. Patriarchs, apostles, prophets, martyrs. That's who's here this morning. Really. I mean that. Literally, that's where we are and who we're with. Thirdly, what time is it? And that's the one thing we have to understand this morning, because it has to do with what Jesus meant when he said to the woman, "Believe me, woman, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know. For salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming, and has now come, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth." Now, I want you to take note of something. We're going to come back to it in a moment. But when Jesus twice says, "A time is coming," it is literally in the Greek, "the hour is come" or "is coming." And whenever Jesus uses that phrase, "the hour has come," he's referring to his cross. And we'll get back to that. But what he says to this woman comes at the end of an emotional buildup. It culminates in a woman with a sordid past running back to her village and telling everyone she met, "Come and meet a man who told me everything I ever did." And she's glad. Would you be glad to know that there's someone who knows everything you've ever done? It could be horrifying. Have you ever had someone you know who doesn't like you get some information on you that's not very flattering? Have you ever feared that God might be making a movie of your life, including all your thoughts and fantasies, to be released on DVD for all to watch on Judgment Day? It could be terrible. But on the other hand, knowing there's someone who knows everything about you could be absolutely wonderful. To be known completely, utterly, inside and out, and still to be loved. Well, that would be freedom. That would be coram Deo. And there was something about what Jesus said about worship that made her delight in her exposure. Made her run back to town and say, "Will you come and meet a man who knows everything I ever did?" And believe me, that town had talked about what she had done with her 5 husbands and the man she's now living with who's not a husband at all. Now, why did she do this? Now, let me propose a few possibilities. One, Jesus told her that God is a father. And this delighted her to know that the one who knew her completely loved her completely. And the way he treated her made it seem credible. It also amazed her. You know, God was not spoken of that way in that day. Now, the idea of God as a father is in the Old Testament. But by the first century, the names for God had been treated so holy as to be phased out altogether. One just didn't say God's name at all, but used oblique phrases and terms like the Holy One, the Almighty. But Jesus said, the Father. Can you delight in that? For some, father is a scary, ugly word. You wonder, does that mean God is like my father? Or that father, the drunk, the molester, the abuser, the detached? St. Augustine had such a bad relationship with his father, he couldn't speak the word father to God for many years after his conversion. Or for you, does it mean someone who's nice and likable but not amazing? Anemic, inconsequential, even something to grow away from. It seems like we bounce around on this, don't we? That God is really a good guy. He's really a good friend. And then we read passages in the Bible that portray him as awesome and frightening and holy. Which one is he? He's both. He's both. That's what makes God so exciting. Now, this is a clumsy illustration, but I think it gets as close as anything I can think of. When my kids were growing up, of course, we were all big Star Wars fans, and The Empire Strikes Back, that great vile character, Jabba the Hutt. Remember him? huge and frightening. And I don't want to compare God to Jabba, okay? But I do want to make a comparison about the way my kids related to me when I acted as though I were Jabba. Our game was Jabba the Butt. And the boys and my daughter, I would get in the living room and I would walk around, Jabba the Butt, and they would get so angry. They'd start shouting at me. And they'd start running up and hitting me, and then I'd just be growling and fighting at them, and pretty soon we'd be down on the ground and they'd be wrestling with me and I'm just growling, I'm Jabba the Butt, and they're so mad, we hate you, Jabba the Butt, and then pretty soon one of them would start crying. Usually Joel, no. Because for a while they forgot it was Daddy. And I needed to calm them down and remind them that this is Dad. Well, it's a clumsy illustration, but it's a good one, I think. When we worship God, it ought to be a little bit like that wrestling going on. He's our Abba Father, and He is no one to be trifled with. He's both. Take one away, and you lose the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. We should come to worship with a stunned kind of confidence. Peter Kraft puts it, we appreciate how incredible this intimacy is only after we have learned the opposite lesson, God's awesomeness and infinite otherness, the distinctively Jewish revelation of God as transcendent creator. Only after we are Jews can we be Christians. Only after we know God in awe can we know God in intimacy. The fear, the awe of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and filial intimacy is the end. And Jesus told her that the Father is a seeker. Yet the hour is coming, and has now come, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for they are the kind of worshipers, now hear this, the Father seeks. This causes people problems. And it should if you think about it. I mean, the Father is seeking people to worship Him. Now, we hate people, don't we, that demand that we admire them and worship them. And, it's disgusting. There's a need in them. There's an emptiness that they're trying to fill up with our adoration. But God doesn't seek our worship because He needs it. He does because we so need it ourselves. Now, just think about this for a minute. The world is full of worshipers, people who praise things, sports fans, birders, lovers, who just can't stop talking about the things that they admire. Now along comes God, the one who holds us like this. And He says things like, let me quote a few verses. He talks about idols. Those who make them will be like them, and so will all who trust in them. They have eyes but cannot see, mouths but they cannot speak. They have noses but they cannot smell, ears but they cannot hear. They have hands but cannot feel. They have feet but cannot walk. Those who worship them will be like them. Now God looks at us and He says, you will become what you worship. And you worship anything less than utter truth, utter beauty, utter glory, you'll become less than human. Right there with "Let's get our bearings" is my favorite quotation in all of C.S. Lewis's writings. Does God think we want too much or too little? If we consider the unblushing promises of reward and the staggering nature of the rewards promised in the Gospels, Lewis writes, it would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures fooling about with drink and sex and ambition. When infinite joy is offered us, like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. The Father comes along seeking worshipers, seeking people he can just get their attention long enough to say, will you get your eyes off the mud? Will you stop thinking about drink, sex, and ambition just long enough to see what will give you infinite joy? Wow. The kindest thing God could ever do for us is to seek us, that he might make us worshipers. He doesn't need it, but oh, do we ever. Need to be expanded. We're crimped and cramped, we're dusty and we're blind and we're deaf until we see the one who sees us. The Lord is exalted over all the nations, his glory above the heavens. Who is like the Lord our God, the one who sits enthroned on high, who stoops down to look on the heavens and the earth? He raises the poor from the dust. Huh? He lifts the needy from the ash heap. Huh? He seats them with the princes of his people. He settles the barren woman in her home as a happy mother of children. Praise the Lord. Father seeks those who will worship him the way a lover seeks the beloved. And then that last phrase, the hour is coming and has come. The hour being his cross. We're true worshipers. It won't be between Jerusalem and Mount Gerizim. It's not a particular place. It just means that true worshipers will worship him in spirit and in truth. They will come to God through the Son, who is demonstrated to God's, the Father's, love on the cross. No wonder she could go back home and say, he knows everything I ever did. And it's cool. It's better than cool. So, all of life, this is the purpose of life. This is what we're here for. And chapel is one of the places where we are reminded a few times a week. It's not all we do. It's really a very tiny percentage of what we do, because all we do is supposed to be coram Deo, before the face of the one who holds us in his hand. But we come here to get our focus back. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Would you all stand?